Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Goins, and welcome to All In on Real Estate. I started this meetup because when I was in the military, no one in my circles talked about real estate. A lot of times they talked about thrift savings plan, they talked about debt, stocks, and bonds. And a lot of times people deploy, you see a lot more dog charges and pickup trucks on the road instead of appreciating value items like real estate. So I want to have a meetup that's be an educational platform that you can hear guest speakers talk about different things of real estate to teach people, and hopefully they can build wealth for them, and not only for them but for their families. And also this meetup is an affiliate of the GOB network. I'm very, very excited for my guest speaker today, Mr. Brian Briscoe. Brian, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Doing great. How you doing? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, man. I'm really, really happy to have you on here. Thank you so much, man, for being on here. I know that this is the Brian Briscoe week.
Oh, it seems like it, man. It seems like it. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, unintentionally, I was on Yona Weiss's meetup last night.
I heard you.
Unintentionally, I signed myself up for three in a row. Just I wasn't looking at the weekend as a whole. And when people would ask me, "Hey, do you want to speak at my meetup?" Sure. I would look at the single day that they asked. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm open that day." Sure. But it wasn't until like probably a week and a half ago that I was looking at the calendar and I'm like, did I really sign myself up for three in a row? But that's all right though. So what I'm going to try to do is not repeat what I said last night. There's a couple of people in the group that were here last night, but
Right, right.
um,
Including myself.
yeah, yeah. So if I could, let me do one thing real quick. If you guys have ever invested money in real estate, put a one in the chat box right now. Your own money, whether it's your project or somebody else's. And if you haven't, put a zero. How about that? Just see where everybody's at. All right. A lot of ones. First zero. Not a problem. Everybody at one point, well, everybody when they're born is at a zero, but okay, good. All right, how about this one? I'm an apartment guy. So how about apartments? Have you ever invested either an LP or a GP in apartment? We'll reset the deck. One if the answer is yes, and zero if the answer is no. I guess I could do Y's and N's, but that's boring. I've got 2 degrees in math, so ones and zeros speak to me a lot more than numbers, right? That's why I like Ruben's hat so much. But okay, so all right, a little different. First one was mostly ones, and this is looks like it's more zeros than ones. All right. So how about this? Little bit deeper as far as the apartments, LP or GP. If you're an LP only, type LP. If you're a GP only, type GP. If you're both, type both. Make it super simple. Okay. Nice. All right. And if the answer is none, put none in too. That makes it work. Or zero again. But all right. Just trying to see where most people are here. Okay. Now for the zeros in that group, what are you guys looking to do? If you could boil it down to a couple of words, are you looking to actively invest and be a GP, or are you looking to passively invest, eventually become an LP or something else? All right, wait a little longer because it takes a little longer to type a couple of words. LP, I like that. Graduate to GP. Okay. GP.
Okay, Mr. 1031 want to be GP. Okay, I see you. Look at your name,
Yeah.
Mr. 1031.
Who's Mr. 1031? Let's look around.
He's trying to come up with. He has deemed himself the nickname giver at meetups. So he gave Lawrence Mr. International. He's trying to. That'll be his brand. Is Mr. I give nicknames Aaron. but
I give
I've
nicknames,
been
Aaron.
131, and so I guess I'm
Yeah.
just an expert on it. So I don't know. But yes, I do.
Oh, there we go. Mr. 1031. All right. Well, cool. So a little bit about me. I was born in the great state of Utah. All right. Went to University of Utah, 2 degrees in math. And, I never, I don't know. I mean, never really thought that, thought a lot about investing, but I taught a college class, and the math guys, we were a little snooty, I guess, but there was one class that they would let grad, or there was a couple classes that let grad students teach, like the 101s, the 105s, the very lower division math classes. But one of them we dubbed Math for Poets. All right. And we called it Math for Poets because it was the math class that all the liberal arts majors needed to take to graduate from the University of Utah. Right. And up until then, the type of math I did was, quite a bit different, a lot more rigorous. We were like proving theories and theorems and all kinds of crazy stuff. And the Math for Poets was, as far as the actual math and the rigor goes, almost zero. So a lot of the grad students and teachers didn't like teaching that class. But since I was brand new, guess who was teaching that class? And the answer is me. But I get in, and it's basically a class about functional math. We were teaching about interest rates. We were teaching percentages, things like that. We wanted people to be math literate. That's kind of the focus of the course, is to make people literate. So when you see something in the news expressed as a percentage, what that means, and you can analyze and say, okay, it's a 30% gain. That means, and you could figure those things out. But something in there that I really latched onto is there was a handful of formulas that you can use in investing. The interest rate formula, I mean, that was one that I had known since I was in high school, but there's a couple of, if you look at the formulas, there's lots of letters and numbers on them. I'm not going to bore you with what they were, but there was a couple of formulas that were like the savings formula. Like, what happens if you put $200 in a bank account every month? Or what happened, and do that for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And I mean, I knew this just because of my math background. I knew the power of compound interest or interest over time. But that really started getting me thinking a lot, because I was teaching everybody every single day how to manipulate the formulas and how to interpret what it actually meant. I didn't want to just say, hey, look, here's how to use the formula. Great. But I want to take it one step deeper. And here's what it actually means. If you save money, and you invest money, what are the things that really change your returns? And, if you boil it down to two variables, looking at long-term returns, number one is time. That's the one that's really going to help you out. It doesn't matter where you start. Time's going to make you a millionaire. The second one was trying to get the higher interest rate. So if you could, when you start manipulating these formulas, if to be able to maximize your wealth or returns, assuming you have a fixed rate to invest every month, the two variables you want to increase is your interest rate and your time, right? So, I mean, I really was fascinated with that, and I started looking at, how to make that work for me. All right, so 2 degrees in math, bachelor's and master's at University of Utah, and I made this crazy decision. Now, I love math, I really do. I loved it more 20 years ago, but 20 years and a couple of months ago, I looked around. We were at a department picnic. So this is probably 21 years ago. We're at a department picnic, so all the math professors and graduate students were at a picnic at a park just a couple of blocks from campus. Who's ever had a math teacher, like a college math teacher? All right. Okay. Here's what I realized this day, and tell me if this is what you guys, what matches with what you guys think of a math professor at college. It was the most socially awkward event I think I have ever been to. And I'm looking around and, I'm looking at all these guys that are just absolutely brilliant, and they couldn't hold a conversation. When they're up in front of the chalkboard, and, this is like 1990 something, so we use chalkboards. When they're in front of the chalkboard and everything's going well, they're brilliant and they can talk. And sometimes they're even funny, but you put them in a social situation, and it dawned on me. I'm like, if I do what they did, I'm going to be like they are. Okay. And that scared me. Okay. That really scared me. I wanted their job. I did not want to be like them, though. So I started looking for something that would broaden my my base, basically make me a more well-rounded person. And a guy that I knew a long time ago was a Marine reservist. All right. And I started thinking, like, you know what? That would actually work. There's a lot of things in the military that would add to what I'm doing right now, kind of provide the types of things that I want, but you're not going to find getting a PhD and working as a mathematician. All right. So I got into the Marine Reserves, right? Went to boot camp on May 4th. No, I got my master's degree on May 4th. I went to boot camp on May 7th, 2001. All right. So 20 years and 2 months, 20 years and 1 month ago, almost to the day. When I got out of boot camp, it was August, it's 3 months boot camp, but first week of August, we moved to Minnesota. And I started going to the University of Minnesota, which at the time was a top 5 school in math. And a month later, the World Trade Center went down, and a plane happened to fly into the Pentagon. I mean, it's just short building. I'm not quite sure how you do that, but I mean, you guys all know. But that changed things. So I've essentially been active duty in the Marine Corps ever since. And speaking of Pentagon, I walked out of that building not quite for the last time today, but I'm not going to go back to that building for another 2 months. And when I go back, it's going to be to do just enough for them to say, you're no longer active duty, you're retired. So today was essentially my last day of work in the Marine Corps. But anyway, along the way, like I said, with the math background and with the knowledge of the formulas and how things work, and looking at what I wanted to do, I don't think anybody wants to work till they're 80. My dad's 75, and he's still working. He got a retirement and a pension, but he's not making a whole lot of money, and he's still working. I don't think anybody wants that. So I started really thinking, okay, how can I do this? And like a lot of people read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, whatnot. But I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a lot of the stuff he's talking about are vehicles. I understand the math and the mechanics. He's talking a lot about the vehicles and changing your mindset about money. And I remember he talks about commercial real estate, which is what I'm in right now. And ironically, I kept on reading about commercial real estate, and I started thinking about, okay, how can I apply what Mr. Kiyosaki is talking about to my life? And I remember thinking, wow, commercial real estate sounds really complicated. I don't think I can do that. I don't think I could buy an apartment building. I don't think I could buy a hotel or an office building or anything like that. That's wow. So I immediately wrote it off. But fortunately, I thought, but I bet you I can buy single family homes. I bet I could do that. And something that I really like about real estate, and this is, my math brain going again, is the principle of leverage, because it's a really interesting thing. If you have $100,000 in stock and the stock price goes up by 6%, you make $6,000. If you have $100,000 in real estate and it goes up 6%, you make, $6,000 again. But the difference is, usually when you're purchasing real estate, you're not putting $100,000 down. You're putting $20,000 or $25,000 down. And so instead of getting a 6% return on your money, which is 6%, you're getting like, I don't know, a 24% return on your money because of this principle called leverage. Because the bank is paying most of the purchase price, you're getting leverage, and that just puts that interest rate, on steroids, essentially, So it just immediately resonated with me. It's like, man, if I could just, get a bank to fund a house and start renting it out, that'd be great. But, I was active duty and I was in Okinawa, Japan, and other side of the world, and internet was nowhere near what it is today, so buying real estate across the world was a bridge too far for me at the time. So I decided to wait, and I get to Southern California in 2006, and I'm like, I'm going to buy a house. This is going to be awesome. All right. You guys know what happened in Southern California, the real estate market shortly after. Fortunately, I started looking at properties, and the optics didn't match the narrative. What I was seeing, and things just didn't connect. I remember looking at the houses that I could afford, and I could get 900 square feet, and my all-in price on the mortgage is going to be about $3,000 a month. But down the road a little bit, I could get a 2,500 square foot house and rent it for 1,900. And fortunately, I saw the big disparate change, the difference in the two areas, and I didn't buy there. I ended up buying a house in Salt Lake City. And then the market crashed, and I bought a house in San Diego. And lending environment changed, and I tried to buy another house, and all the banks I went to told me no. The rules had tightened up quite a bit, and I got a bunch of no's. And unfortunately, I stopped. And it wasn't an intentional stop. It was, I got deployed to Iraq, and then I got home, and I was home for 8 months. And I got deployed to Afghanistan, and I got home, and I was home for a couple of months. And then we moved to California again, where the real estate market's crazy. And then we moved overseas again. And then I moved back to Southern California and deployed again. So unfortunately, I let all of that stop me and get in the way. But there came a time again where I started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I started seeing, this Marine Corps thing is not going to last forever. And the way the military works, I know some of you guys know this, are very familiar with this, but it's like a light switch. As far as your retirement, you can get a pension, but at 20 years, you've got a light switch. You're 19 years, 364 days, that light switch is turned off. 20 years and 0 days, all of a sudden you have a pension. So, I started realizing, okay, I really need to go to that 20-year mark. I'm talking right now, probably when I was at 16, 17 years in service. But I started realizing that I needed an exit plan. I knew a lot of things about myself, right? One of the things they tell you in the Marine Corps a lot is to know yourself. And something that I knew about myself is that if I did not come up with an exit plan, that I would stay in the Marine Corps until they kicked me out. Because part of the reason I had stayed in the Marine Corps 16 years is because every time there was an exit ramp in front of me, I had failed to plan. I had failed to plan on what was going to come next. And so when the Marine Corps said, hey, do you want to play again for another 3 years? It was just like, well, yeah, I guess so, and really that's what ended up happening. And looking back at it, I wish I would have taken some time in, 2012 or something. I wish I would have taken some time in 2012 and tried to figure things out. But that's long past, and I don't dwell on that very much. But maybe I will for the group. I mean, I was 2012. I already had a couple rental properties, and I was looking to buy more, but I think I was too afraid to get out. I was too afraid to get rid of that income stream. And being a government employee, military or not, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to get rid of a government employee. It's hard to fire somebody. I mean, I would have to do something criminal, and not just criminal. We're talking like felony for them to kick me out. All right. So, little misdemeanors, if I just do one, okay, maybe I won't get promoted ever again, but, they're probably not going to kick me out. So for a long time, I looked at that paycheck and I just said, I'm going to take that paycheck. I'm going to take that paycheck. But part of me wishes that in 2012, I had the foresight to be able to do what I'm doing now, because, I'd be talking to you from a, anyway, much different position, hopefully. But, that said, I did what a lot of people do, and I did what was safe. I did what was secure. But, around 3 years ago, I started thinking, okay, I need an exit plan from the Marine Corps. I need something. And I started, on a deployment, I started reading a lot of books, and book after book after book after book. And is Marcus still on here? I think Marcus Bell already. I actually met him in the Pentagon today, but Marcus Jackson, met him in the Pentagon today, and I told him a little bit about this. I was on the USS Macon Island, somewhere in the Middle East, big ship, kind of looks like a carrier, but I started reading book after book after book after book on real estate. And I read the Subject 2 books, I read the Bird books, I read the Fix and Flip books, the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. I probably read 40 or 50 books on single family homes, because I was still stuck in that mindset until finally I accidentally downloaded a book on apartments. All right. And it was accidental. It honestly was. And, it was the way it worked is we didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have really good internet on the ship. And so we couldn't go to like Amazon and download books. It was just not a possibility. So every time we were ashore, which is about once a month, I would download a ton of books. But I got to the end of my book list that I downloaded the last time I was ashore, and like, all right, I'll read this apartment book. And it was like the light went on, it was like opening the curtains and seeing the light of day for the first time, because I realized that's what I was looking for. What I had been worried about with single family was how difficult it would be to scale. And I'm thinking, the math guy in me, I pulled out my Excel spreadsheet and I looked at a bunch of numbers, and I thought, okay, if I want to replace my current income with single family homes, I looked at a typical deal I did a little bit of research on the market in Salt Lake City, and I looked at what house prices were going and what the rents were and everything else. And I kind of picked a standard, just a deal size. I don't remember what the purchase price was, but when I started spreadsheeting and looking at down payments and everything else, I figured I could probably do 2, maybe 3 houses a year. And it was going to take me 20 or 30 years to replace my income based on my numbers. And gosh, I was already 40 years old. I'm just like, man, that's a long time. But the apartment book really changed my mind, because I realized that with about the same amount of work it takes to close a single family home, I could buy a 12 or a 20 unit apartment building. And a little more work, a little more knowledge, and a little bit more preparation, I can buy a 50 or 100 unit apartment building. And now all of a sudden, the idea of scaling just made sense. I was multiplying, not adding. So I really started honing in on multifamily. I really started honing in on apartments. Okay, I just started devouring podcasts. I wish meetups like this existed back then, but the only meetups that existed back then were at the local RIAs. And I started going to the local RIAs. Most of them were like once a month, so I'm in the DC area, and I would go to everything that was within driving distance. I would go to meetups and just started taking the steps you need. And there were a couple of moments that I think were absolutely key. And most of them come around being around other people who were doing it. Being around the type of person that I wanted to become, because they would inspire me. I remember I was at a Michael Blanc conference in DC, not very far from where I'm sitting right now, but I was at a Michael Blanc conference, and I was sitting in the corner of the big room. I'm an introvert, I really am. I was sitting in the corner of the big room with an Air Force guy. And he had just retired from the Air Force. He had probably 900 apartment units that he had syndicated. And he was giving me a pep talk, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He kind of turned me around, and he pointed to everybody else in the networking hall. And he said, none of those guys are any smarter than you are. And a lot of them have very large portfolios. And I'm like, wow, and that was something that just, it changed how I thought about it. Because prior to that, my thought was, I am not good enough. I don't know enough. I'm not ready. And so for the next 2 days while I was at that conference, I started talking to people, and I made it my goal to find everybody in that room that had closed on apartments and start talking to them. And he was right. They weren't necessarily any smarter than I was, but I mean, they were all normal people, like somebody you might meet at, your kid's soccer game or whatever, another one of the dads or whatever. That's what they were. They were just normal people. And I started realizing, like, he's right. There's nothing that's really different between the guys who were doing it and me, as far as intellect, as far as skills, as far as anything else. All right. And I started talking to them further, and I started asking questions. And one thing almost every single one of them, probably every single one of them, had in common was they all had some sort of mentor, and that was the common theme in the entire room. Now, granted, the entire room is a Michael Blanc conference, and all of his mentoring students get free tickets to go to those conferences. And so it was chock full of a bunch of people who were interested in mentorship. So, I mean, statistically, it was a little skewed, but walking around, everybody there who had closed on an apartment building either had paid for a mentorship program or had some sort of mentor, and like I said, it was the common theme, and every single one of them said that mentor was absolutely key in what they did. So I start scratching my head and thinking, man, how do I get one of those? What can I do to attract a mentor? So I started looking into it and started thinking, and I at this time, this was about 3 years ago, and I realized, okay, my goal is I want to be able to replace my income in 3 years. That's not a lot of time to build a business that brings in 6 figures every year. And I kept on thinking about that mentorship, that mentor. So what did I do? I sold one of the houses, and I paid for a mentorship program. All right. Fortunately, I had bought 2 houses, and I sold them. I actually ended up selling both of them, but I sold one of the houses, took the money, paid for a mentorship program. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what accelerated my growth. That's what helped me get past the I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't know if I can do this phase, is having that mentor, in my corner, so to speak. We had a call every other week, 1 hour call every other week is how the program was set up. And, I could text him, I could email him, but, if I ever had any questions, he was always there to answer them. He was always there to encourage me, always there to push me forward. And we would talk about, what's your plan? What are you trying to do? And he would give me guidance on what to do. And instead of learning like I had up until that point, which is school of hard knocks, trial and error, he was able to steer me clear of a lot of things. There was one property that I was really excited about, and I showed it to him. I'm like, I'm going to put an offer in on this property. I think it's, and he's like, all right. So, I sent him my analysis, the day before we were going to get on the phone call. And he's like, yeah, you probably should steer clear of this. And he just started going up and down the expense column. He's like, this is going to be higher. He's like, look, I've got a property right down the street from this one. I really do. It's like, I've actually seen this property. The broker sent this one to me too. I've already looked at it. Yeah, one potentially negative thing is our criteria, our deal criteria overlapped a little bit. You know, I was looking in the 1 to 4 million phase, and he was looking at the 3 to 10 million. So this was actually one of those, you know, narrow windows, which was the type of stuff that he would purchase too. But he was able to point out a dozen reasons why my analysis was a little short. And when we redid the numbers, I started looking at that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is not a very good deal. But I started verifying the stuff he was telling me. I started looking at the other comps and taking things one step deeper. Type of guy I am, if you tell me I'm wrong, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm not. I'm not, you know, and I'm gonna try to figure out, was I wrong? And I went back and I did the same thing. Like, you know what, he was right. You know, I kind of looked at some of the comps and I said the rents were a little higher than maybe they should be. And, you know, he had me on the expenses, and you know, I called the county and I said, what's going to happen to the property taxes after I buy this? And first time I had realized that, you know, the property taxes on multifamily jump when a sale takes place in the state of South Carolina. It's not like that in every state, but in South Carolina it is. But so end of the day, you know, the mentor was able to steer me in the right direction, give me just what I needed to be able to get to where I wanted to go. The other thing that really helped, and you know, he was telling me I needed to do this the whole time. He's like, you need to find partners. You can't do this by yourself. You need to find partners. And every call he would remind me, he's like, are you networking with people? Do you have somebody that you can partner with? Do you have this? Do you have that? You know, and I was like, you know, for some reason it just didn't dawn on me that other people were important too. Part of me, you know, and it's just my personality. Part of me thought I can do this by myself. You know, I'd gone from the point to where I thought that I wouldn't be able to do anything to like, I can do this. But long story short, I found a guy who I was able to partner with. And he brought another partner to the table, somebody he had already partnered with. And interesting how it happened. It was in a real estate forum. He posted some information. He's like, hey, I'm looking at this property and I'm about ready to put in an offer and everything else. And he put just enough details about the property in there. And I started scratching my head. I'm like, God, that unit count. I'm like, 104 units in Columbia, South Carolina. You know, I'm looking at a place that's 104 units in Columbia, South Carolina. You know, and I started putting two and two together and just going through his posts, and I'm like, we're looking at the same property. And I had written up an LOI. I hadn't sent it out yet, or an offer letter, a letter of intent, but I hadn't sent it yet. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, I've been kind of buddy with this guy for a couple of months now, and I didn't know we were competing on stuff. So I called him. And I'm like, hey, I don't know if you realize this, but you know that 104 unit property that you're looking at in Columbia? I'm like, I'm about to put an offer in that in too. And we talked for 5 or 10 minutes. And at the end of the conversation, he suggested, hey, why don't we collaborate on this one? Why don't we share notes and we'll put an offer in together? You know, and part of me didn't want to do it. You know, part of me was worried. I'm like, I've talked this. I mean, that was not the first conversation I'd ever had with him. It was probably the third conversation I'd ever had with him. But the sum total of all three conversations was still probably less than 20 minutes, you know? So something inside me said, yes, let's do it. But I don't know. I mean, if he would have said, hey, let's get together, form a company, be, you know, exclusive and, you know, see how far we can go at the time, I would absolutely not, you know, and it would probably have been dumb for him to say so because he didn't know me very much, but he said, let's collaborate on this one property. I'm like, yeah, let's collaborate. Now, that's a good idea. And I said yes because he said on this one property, you know, but I had in my mind what my trajectory was going to look like, and, you know, may or may not have included him, but we started collaborating on the one property, and he had some insights that I didn't. And I had some insights that he didn't. And when we started comparing notes and looking at how he viewed multifamily versus how I viewed multifamily, I started realizing that there's some value in having a second set of eyes. I mean, my mentor would look over a lot of stuff, but my mentor there's limited availability because of how the program was set up and everything else. But I could call Eric just about any time of the day. Hey, did you look at that property? Did you look at those numbers? What do you think about the comps? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? But what ended up happening is we went from let's partner on this deal to, we started talking about, we put an offer in, didn't get the property, but we started talking about other things. All right. So we both were interested in the state of South Carolina. And so, I was looking at other areas. I was looking at Utah and some parts of Idaho at the time, but, and he was looking in, South Carolina and Georgia, and I was like doing South Carolina, North Carolina. But what we decided to do next was anything in the state of South Carolina that we find that's between X purchase price and X purchase price, we partner on. And so every time I got a property emailed to me or a broker told me about something, I would call him and talk to him about it. And every time he got one, he would call me and talk about it. And like I think I mentioned, he had already partnered with somebody else, so it ended up turning into a threesome. So it was me, Eric, and another guy named Brian Mallon. But when we compared everything, there's something that I didn't quite realize, and I was just starting to learn at the time, but you have to have certain qualifications to get a commercial loan. All right. You have to have net worth greater than or equal to the properties or the loan value, actually. And we were looking at properties, from $3 to $5 million. And, the three of us at one point added up our collective balance sheets, and it was less than $3 million. So we like, okay, we're going to need somebody else. And we started looking at the other numbers, and we're like, hey, we really want to get something, in that $3 to $5 million range. How much money we're going to have to raise? Well, it turns out, for a $3 million apartment, you're raising over $1 million in most cases. On a $5 million apartment, the number approaches $2 million. And we thought we probably need a little bit of help raising money. And Eric introduced Brian and I to a guy named Todd, and that ended up being the four founders of Four Oaks Capital. Shortly after that, and I don't think it's a coincidence, shortly after that, we got our first property under contract. And why I don't think it's coincidence is, I just spent probably 6 months looking for a property as Brian Briscoe I talked to the brokers. I am looking for this. I am trying to do this. I am doing that. And I think most brokers realize that it takes more than one person to buy a large apartment complex, right? So, end of the day, when I was able to call up and say and brokers are smart. I didn't realize it at the time, but brokers are smart. They know what it takes to close on a property. They know that you need net worth. They know that you need liquidity. They know that you need, a certain set of financials to be able to close on a property. And now with the four of us, we had enough net worth to close on a $4 million property. We had enough liquidity. We had everything that we needed to close on the property. And amazingly, shortly after the four of us came together, we got something under contract. All right. So like I said, I really don't think it's coincidence. I think the brokers started looking at us differently when we partnered up, pooled our resources, and our qualifications met the threshold to be able to get a commercial loan. The only thing we didn't have between the four of us was experience. And we just reached out to one of the guys, and we actually reached out to a couple of people, and we had 3 people who said they were willing to do it, and the 4 of us talked together and said we want him. And so we found somebody to be the experienced guy in the GP, and that's how we put our first deal together. So the 4 of us really pushed to get that deal across the finish line, and fortunately we had a whole lot of time built into the contract, but we got that property across the finish line 2019, so 2 years ago. And some people talk about law of the first deal, and Ruben's on here. He might tell you about his not good luck with law of the first deal, but something changed with the brokers. I think once we had a partnership where we met minimum loan requirements, that was one thing, but once we had closed on a property, our stock value went way up in the eyes of brokers and in the eyes of everybody involved. Now when we're talking with brokers, we could point to, we raised $1.8 million to purchase a $4 million property. We were looking for something else. What do you have? All right. A little different conversation than, hi, my name's Brian. I'm looking to possibly maybe get an apartment complex. What do you got? Much different conversation, but we were able to leverage that to get another property under contract, then another property under contract, and then another property under contract, and started rolling. And so essentially in the last 2 years, we've gone from 0 to 485 units with another 144 under contract right now. So I think that's doing the math. What's that? 630 roughly. So, after we close on this one, we'll be at 630 in right around 2-year mark. But anyway, that's where I came from. That's kind of how I got to where I'm at. And, looking back at it, a couple of things, like I said, were getting around people who are doing what you want to do, getting around those other investors. All right. For me, they inspired me. They opened my mind to the possibilities. All right. And just hearing other people talk about larger deals. When I went to that first big conference where I told you that Air Force guy, took me, figuratively by the hand. It was also the first time I met somebody that had closed on something that was like 150, 200 units. And he was telling me it's not that hard. He's like, it's not any more difficult to close on a 200 unit property than it is in a 40 unit property. Like, really, you just have to be able to raise a little more capital, but everything else, the mechanics are exactly the same. So I started getting around people who had done these 100+ units. And I started thinking that, maybe I don't need to do a 6 or 8 or a 10 or a 12 plex first. Maybe I can go straight after these 40 units or these 60 units or these 80 units properties. But so like the one thing was getting around people who have done it has really helped me. And then the other thing was flat out mentorship, finding the mentor. And I don't think it matters whether it's a pay to play mentor or it's something that naturally happens. That mentorship really made a difference in my trajectory. And, like I said, now I have a podcast right now. We've released 140 something episodes. Okay. And on every episode, I bring on somebody experienced and bring on somebody who's less experienced and put them together and talk. Aaron was on an episode that released a couple weeks ago.
Last week.
Yeah. I lose track. After 141, I lose track. But after talking with all of these experienced investors, and some of these guys had, two of the guys that I brought on my podcast have had $1 billion portfolios. But talking to all these people, the same trend holds true. It wasn't just that little group at the Michael Blanc conference who were all already Michael Blanc mentoring students. But the same thing held true with a lot of them, is they all, almost exclusively, every single one of those guys and gals had mentors. So end of the day, I think those are, if you boil it down, knowledge is important, yes, but having the people around you to support you, I think will more than make up for any lack of knowledge that anybody has. But that said, Aaron, what do you think? Questions?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you this. You talk about the podcast, and I just want to ask you, like, what was the reason why you started your podcast?
Gosh, man, it's almost like I planted that question. We had plans to create an educational community. All right, we wanted to create the same community that helped us meet as a partnership. We wanted to create the same type of community that helped us to get our first deal. And my role in the company for the last 6 or 8 months, I work at the Pentagon. I unfortunately, my job doesn't help me. My job interferes with me being able to find assets and do asset management, things like that. So I've been creating a lot of content. I've been creating basically the bones of a community where people can come together, meet other people, network, learn about the business, and find a way to do what we've done. So we created the podcast as kind of a precursor for that. So we bring an experienced investor and we bring an inspiring investor on almost every episode. And what we were looking to do is just expand our network of people trying to get in the game and people with a lot of experience, so that when we opened up the community, we would have a lot of people who were ready to go in it. And incidentally, we're going to launch that community in about a month. So we call it Tribe of Titans. And like I said, we're going to bring aspiring investors in. We're going to bring some experienced guys and gals in. And it's going to be one-stop shop for people who want to learn how to do what we've done. So yeah, like I said, thanks. That was almost like a planted question right there.
Yeah, you said that right there, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you before we start opening up for attendees to ask questions. I was really fascinated with, and we talked about it briefly about your post you put the other week, and
Mm-hmm.
how it was one of the LinkedIn's editor's choice.
Yeah.
And it really intrigued me with it. So could you just explain the reason why you did that post? Because I think people can really learn from your experience and how how it has impacted you, short term.
So the posts that I have done that I've put on LinkedIn that have done the absolute best are the ones that have taken the least amount of time to think about. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's like if I take a long time to think about what's going to work and write something up and draft it and polish it up, it falls flat out every time. But I mean, what I've done is over the years I've been very consistent at posting. It's probably 2.5 years of posting between 5 and 10 times a week on LinkedIn. So the post said something like, and this is right when Bitcoin had gone from 60,000 to 38,000 like a couple of days. The post was very simple. It just said, hey, remember that time that Bitcoin dropped like $20,000 in a week? And then next line down, I put a quote from Will Rogers. Don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate, wait. That was the post. Very simple. And it got so much traction. It got so much traction that I had to turn my LinkedIn notifications off because my phone was buzzing so much. I mean, it was crazy. So I checked up on the post a couple of days ago. 60,000 views is what it had. So 60,000 people saw it. But I mean, that particular post, every time I get a post, it hits like 10 or 20,000 views. And those are really like unicorns. What we see, and we look at the analytics, the way that my game plan with posting on LinkedIn is on most of my posts, I will tag our company, Four Oaks Capital. I'll tag Four Oaks Capital on the post. And I'll usually at the bottom put something like, if you're interested in learning more, and I'll tag Four Oaks Capital. But what we try to do is get people to click that. And then once they get to the Four Oaks Capital LinkedIn page, that's where we have links to the actual company. We have some videos and other things like that. But the idea is to try to get them to go to our webpage. But every time I get a post that goes viral, I mean, the short term is we get a spike on the LinkedIn Four Oaks page, and we get a spike on our website. That particular post, and really what matters isn't how many people look at it. What matters is how many people sign up for a phone call, essentially. On our website, at the very top, it's like, hey, if you're interested in investing, click right here and, let's get on a call. So it's not necessarily one post that does it, but over the course of time, we are getting more and more phone calls every week. and more people hitting our website every week. And the vast majority, and we have a short questionnaire, where did you hear about us? This is one of the questions. The vast majority of people click LinkedIn as where they heard of us. The second most popular answer is the podcast. Third most popular answer is a friend told me. And number 4 is Google search. So we're actually paying a marketing company a lot of money right now to try to, get that Google search to, climb in the rankings. But yeah, so it ended up getting picked up by the editors and, front and center on the LinkedIn news page, which I never thought of that. Honestly, I wasn't tracking Bitcoin. I had no idea that it went from 60,000 to 40,000 in a couple of days. And I happened to see an article saying Bitcoin plummets. I opened up the article and I'm like, I knew it, and I'm like, this would make a good post. And I literally just opened my phone. It took me like less than 30 seconds to type it up, hit post, and go. And for some reason, the best post that I've ever had, the most viral posts I've ever had, have been exactly like that. Don't know.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think it brought some controversy. It got people really engaged.
Yeah.
I saw it. I was saying that, that's what make Grant Cardone so popular is that he's hardcore about how he feels, and some people like it, some people don't. But eyeballs go to him, and so some people can handle that. Some people don't like criticism, so they can't handle that. It is what it is.
Yeah, we talk at the office about Bitcoin a lot. We really do. That's Bitcoin and real estate are probably the 2 most common subjects to talk about. But my point on Bitcoin is it's very speculative, and it's supposed to be a currency. And who in their right mind wants to use a currency that can go from 60,000 to 40,000 overnight? That is not anything that I want to invest in. It's not anything that I want to put my money in. Yeah, you might put, a couple $1,000s in it and double your money in a week. You might, but you could put a couple $1,000s in it and lose a couple $1,000s in a week too. But it's something that, I'm not gonna put a whole lot of money in it at all. I haven't yet, and if I do, it might just be play money. It's like, hey, let's see what happens with this. But personally, I like real estate as an asset to invest in. People have been investing in land for thousands of years, and people have gained wealth from land for thousands of years, and it's still a very attractive investment. So I'll take the investment that's done very well for the last several thousand years over the investment that's done very well over the last 5.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. Look, how much time you got left with Brian?
Much as you want.
Okay. So
actually, I got an hour left. My next call's at 9.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna open up to the attendees, and then if you want to, we're gonna go to breakout rooms. You have roll call me. I'll go to breakout rooms. So please fire away, but always, most of the time, I always have one person ask the first question. So Mr. 1031, please ask Brian a question if you got one.
Brian, great presentation as usual. I have this personal question that boggles my mind. What's going to happen to TGIF now that you're on the West Coast space? Is it going to go the way of, California lunchtime or what? I know because you have a lot of people here, and TGIF is his meetup he does on Fridays, 1:00. It's lunchtime. Probably one of the best, meetup or networking sessions you can go to. But what's going to be the future of TGIF now that you're West Coast?
I have done that every single Friday at the same time with the same link for over a year. Me moving to Idaho Falls means it's going to start at 11:00 Mountain, which is 1:00 Eastern. All right. I have no plans of changing anything about that except where I'm sitting when I do it. I'm in a hotel room right now. So I'll just be sitting next week. I'll be sitting at my house in Idaho Falls when we do it. So 1 o'clock Eastern time. I'm gonna drop the link in here for you guys if I can get my mouse to work. Anybody who wants to go, there's one requirement. You have to want to talk about real estate, multifamily specifically, but you have to want to talk about real estate. And as soon as I can get, oh, here it is.
I would say that it's a great time, a great hour where you get to meet like-minded individuals, and Brian does a good job of changing this up, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy. I look forward to it. I would really strongly suggest anybody who wants to network with like-minded individuals to go to that go to the meetup. Brian does a good job, and I love the shameless plugs too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. At the end, at the end of every episode, every meetup, I mean, a lot of people want to promote themselves, and I think that's natural. But at the end of every meetup, I save the last 5 minutes for what I call shameless plugs, and that's just people who want to promote anything they're doing, whether it's a podcast or another meetup or a book or anything else. But gives everybody an opportunity to promote themselves. Shameless plugs. Who else has a question? Cool. I think Mona had her hand up.
Mona does. Okay, go ahead, Mona.
Yes.
Okay, a little hairstyle. Okay, Mona, I see you.
Summertime. Hi, Brian. Greetings from Silver Spring.
Nice. Yeah. We're close.
Yep, absolutely. So I listened to what you were saying in reference to partnering up with folks. My question to you is, what's the best way to learn about capital raising?
Wow. So what I have found about capital raising, and this is how I've done it. I don't know it's the best way, but it's worked for me, is I started looking at the people that I would naturally attract. Okay. And for me, the type of person I naturally attract has a lot in common with me. I mean, people are attracts like when it comes to people. So the people that I most naturally attract are military members, military veterans. And I started thinking, okay, so if military members, military veterans are what I attract most, where should I spend my time? I mean, what narrow this down one step more, what subgroup is going to most likely have $50,000 to be able to invest? All right. I took it one step deeper. I said, well, not the 20-year-olds. All right. So one step deeper, I'm like, well, 35 to 45. And I happen to be in that age group still for the next little bit. But, I took it one step deeper and I said, okay, out of those, which ones are more likely to have money to invest? And in the military, there's a dividing line between officers and enlisted, and officers get paid a lot more. And so what I started to do is really focus a lot of my marketing efforts on military officers, major, lieutenant colonel types. And, a lot of my LinkedIn posts are talking to them. And the other thing is I have a lot of that's actually the demographic that I fall in. So really, I would say, look at your network is the first thing you should do. Look at your network, the people in your network, and do the exact same thing and start stepping it back. Okay, who in my network is likely to have money to invest? And don't think names, think, types of person. And then really what you need to do is come up with what a lot of people call an avatar. And that's the type of person you need to promote to. And you need to be able to speak to them. You need to be able to speak in terms that, they understand. You need to basically, solve their problems, their pain points, as Ed told me a couple of weeks ago. You need to be able to make their pain points go away. He said it a lot more eloquently, but that's really what you're looking to do. And for military members, transitioning is a big deal. A lot of military members, when they transition, they have a 401k equivalent called a TSP, and they're wondering what to do about that. All right. So, So you start looking at, people who are in your network already, people who you can naturally appeal to, people who you can talk straight across the board to and talk their language. And then you intersect that with who in that group is likely to have, $50,000 to $100,000 to invest. That's the starting point. And if you look at your network and there's not a lot of people, maybe you need to do more than scratch the surface, or maybe you need to start hanging out in different networks. But yeah, that's really, I think the best way to answer that question in 2 or 3 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric. So you raise your hand.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for your service, Brian. I appreciate what you do, man. Question for you. Now that you're transitioning out and you're doing what you're doing, amazing stuff. Where do you see yourself moving into the next 5 years, and what are the unknowns for you right now?
Yeah. So where do I see myself moving? So far, all of our properties are in South Carolina and Georgia. If you were to put a 2-hour driving radius around Columbia, South Carolina, all of our properties are in that 2-hour radius. What do I see in the future? We're working right now on a lot of internal things. We brought on a 5th partner who has a very significant net worth and is able to raise a lot more capital than probably the 4 of us together can raise. So what I see as our future is getting into bigger and bigger deals. And something else, maybe things that are a little heavier value add. Right now we're doing the light value adds. We're doing the, change out the carpets, and put some laminate vinyl planking in, put new countertops on, paint the exteriors, do a little bit of landscaping, redo the asphalt, maybe a couple of roofs, and done. But 5 years from now, I think we'll be able to tackle much larger projects and much heavier value adds. I think the value add works almost independent of the economy, because there's forced appreciation that you can actually control. So as far as the type of properties, I think we're going to be sticking in the, probably the 1 to 500 number for the next couple of years. As far as per unit, our last 2 acquisitions, 167 and 144. So I think we'll be sticking to that. And then geographically, I don't know. I'm going to be living in Idaho Falls, and Neil Bawa recently said that's his favorite place in the nation right now to invest. So incidentally, I'm actually going to be a passive investor in development in Idaho Falls, just so I can meet a couple of developers. So as far as new markets, I like Idaho Falls. It's a little smaller, but a lot of growth. I like Salt Lake City. It's where I was born and raised. A lot of growth. I like Boise. So we might open the aperture as far as markets as
well. Great conversation. One question, or actually 1.5, 2. How long is your group? Is it a set time frame, 10 years, 15 years hold? And is the percentage between equity the same on every property?
Every property is a little bit different.
Okay.
And that's just, some people have like a cookie cutter. We have a template that we like, but we adjust it for every property. And a lot of times our hold time is dependent on how long we think it's going to take for us to do the value add. And then we try to match a loan with how long it's going to take us to match the value add and line things up. So typically we're looking 3 to 5 year holds. And for the type of value adds we do in the area we're doing them, we've found that, mathematically, put my, mathematician hat back on, you maximize returns right after you finish your value add project, right after you do all the renovations and stabilize the property at the new higher rents. That is where you maximize your returns. And like when I went back to the beginning, mathematically, if you really want to, gain wealth, you've got to maximize those returns. So that's why we like the 3 to 5 year holds. We have done a couple of properties that are a little longer. We have 2 properties where we assumed loans where, I mean, we didn't get to choose the loan, but we bought the property with the existing loan, and those are the properties where we have slightly different hold times because the loans just didn't quite work the same way for us, if that makes sense. But in general, we're looking at 3 to 5 year holds. We're looking to maximize investor returns. And ideally, we do so well with all of our investments that, when we double your money in 4 years, knock on wood, you'll want to invest with us again.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Next question. Any more questions for Brian?
I have a question. Hi, my name is Claudia. So I have a question about like mentorship and finding a mentor. So I've been hearing about the benefits, and I've been looking. So I when I listen to podcasts and just looking out, but one thing that holds me back is that I keep telling myself, because I'm a long distance investor, that I want to get maybe I want to find somebody like who's in my market, because that would help me a little bit more since I'm out of state. Do you think, does it matter like if they're local or as somebody that I just can connect with and work with? Is that just better? Does it matter if they're like they know your market and they can give you some guidance in your market?
I would say don't look for perfect, look for good enough.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, a lot of times, and this is my experience, a lot of times, like when Eric Shirley offered to partner with me, in my mind, I was going to find a partner that looked like X, Y, and Z. And when he first said, let's partner together, what really was going on in my mind is he doesn't match what I had thought my partner's going to look like. And he's been an amazing partner. But I would say, ideally, what you're saying is absolutely right. Ideally, you want a mentor that's familiar with the market that you want to invest in. And that will help open other doors for you, because they'll have points of contact. They'll have a network of their own in there that they can introduce you to. Maybe they can help you along with certain things that people who aren't in your network or aren't in that market can't. But I'd say look at it more along good, better, and best. And if it's a choice between waiting forever for the perfect mentor and never finding it, and finding somebody that's good enough, I would lean towards good enough.
Okay. Any more questions for Brian? If not, we're gonna go to roll call and breakout rooms.
Sounds like roll call.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we'll go to roll call and then we'll go to breakout rooms. So, roll call, Brian, is when I just roll call out different organizations for people to join, RIA groups. So I'll start with military. As you guys know, last week I had Mike Foster as the guest speaker, and he's part of Active Duty Passive Income. It's a great program, military affiliated. They have Operation Adam, which is a great program. They have a commercial multifamily mastermind group. That's great. So if you guys are looking for a military affiliated group, look at Active Duty Passive Income. I know one guy who's in the Pentagon, it's like Brian was, Kevin Brenner. He's one of the co-hosts of the ADPI podcast, and others. I saw Tim Kelly was on Hutch's meetup earlier this week. Another one is White Feathers, Greg Narrows and those guys. They're stationed out of Hawaii, but California, but it's a great group, a military affiliated group. Also, the War Room Mastermind group, which a couple of us on this meetup is on, including Claudia, myself, and others. Great group, only $50 to join, and you be held accountable to reach your real estate goals. Okay, for civilians, biggerpockets.com. Always a great group. Go to biggerpockets.com and look up all the resources they have. So many resources. Use that as a way to network and learn a lot. And make real estate real. That's a $1,000 course. They go A to Z on all things real estate. So if you guys want to learn more about Make Real Estate Real, please contact me. And I'll give a shout out to Forbes Capital. So if you guys looking for a great organization, Forbes Capital does a great job. Check out Brian on his podcast. Check out our episode together. I really appreciate that, Brian. And then, like I said, and like Brian said before, come to his meetup. Come to TGI Fridays. Great time. A lot of good networking. I know plenty of people on here that attends it. So, I'd love to see more of you guys on there if you guys have the time. Brian just talked about earlier the times for it. So, well, that's roll call. So.